Let's be honest for a second. When you're deep in the trenches of pregnancy, loss, or the postpartum haze, the last thing you have energy for is endless Googling to find a provider you can actually trust. The Vermont Birth Network changes that for those of us living in the Green Mountain State. It's a dedicated network consisting entirely of local Vermont based professionals, from midwives and lactation consultants to loss and bereavement support, all across the state. It's scannable, deeply supportive, and focused on elevating the standard of care for Vermont birthing individuals. If you or a perinatal individual in your life needs real local support from providers who are rooted right here in Vermont, skip the overwhelming internet searches. Head straight to vermontbirthnetwork.com and build the local team you deserve. Hey, welcome back to another Quiet Confessions, little mini episodes where you and I get to spend some time together and I catch you up on what's going on with me. And what's going on with me is I am intentionally sitting down and making time to start our next series together. I am feeling physically somewhat okay, and I have a quiet space for a little bit. So I'm going to dive in and go for it and hope for the best. So if you were here last week, you know that I sent out a poll to my Instagram and Facebook followers on the Quiet Connection accounts and on my personal accounts to see what it was you wanted to know more about. And it was a four-way tie, which was insane. And so I took those answers and I put them in a timeline that made sense for me. And the first thing we're going to tackle is PTSD. Yay, exciting. So any of these things may be triggering to you, and my descriptions of my reactions may be triggering to you. And if that's the case, you can 100% skip this episode. If you do want to listen and you do feel activated, please make sure you do something to take care of yourself afterward, whether it be like getting a warm cup of something yummy, taking a few deep breaths. Just please take care of your mental health. But I'm going to be as open and honest as I feel comfortable being because that's how I roll. You guys know that. So I not only was diagnosed with postpartum PTSD from my birth experience with my youngest, but I also experienced PTSD following everything that came with that postpartum experience. So yeah, like I said, I'm kind of like I've got the train on the tracks and I'm just going to keep going and I'm plowing forward. And so if this is rambly and slightly chaotic, I don't apologize, but hopefully you can buckle up and follow along with my craziness. So when I was finally discharged from all of the intensive treatments that I received for my mental health struggles. All of the inpatient hospitalizations, the partial hospitalization, and the intensive outpatient program. The PTSD and just the continuing battle with OCD, anxiety, panic attacks. It was ongoing. And for me, I've talked about this a little bit in prior confessions, but it manifested in ways that I definitely didn't anticipate and maybe surprising for some people or maybe totally relatable for some people. I guess we're going to find out. But even while I was still receiving outpatient care, there I was noticing certain things that would trigger a panic response in me. One of the first that I can remember is blood pressure machines. I regularly had to have my blood pressure monitored in my outpatient program because of the medication that I was taking. And every time I would have the cuff put on my arm, or if it was a portable machine at a regular, like, doctor's appointment, I could hear the wheels, I would instantly flash back to being in one of my inpatient stays. And when I say flashback, I really do mean flashback. Like, my whole body would tense. I could see in my mind's eye, like, I don't know, whatever day it would just pick one of the hospitals that I was in, and I just could see the nurse wheeling down the hall with the blood pressure machine and smell the smells, and, it was like I was transported back in time and location, and I would panic. I would get harder to breathe, I'd get really nauseous, and it was difficult. I didn't say anything about it at first because I thought it was so ridiculous. Like, I still had so much shame. A and I it really didn't go away. This particular trigger didn't go away. It lessened. I still experience anxiety when getting my blood pressure taken, and my youngest is about to turn 4. She will be 4 in just about a week and a half. So, 4 years later, and this is still something that changes, like, my body chemistry. Like I said, it's much less intense, but that is just, the first, like, instance of flashbacks that I can remember experiencing, and it was so fresh in coming from being inpatient because I went from being inpatient to very quickly being outpatient, that I didn't really understand what it was at the time, and because I didn't say anything, I I didn't get a better understanding of it. But things kind of developed and got more intense, and as I talked about it in therapy, I began to understand that these were flashbacks or panic attacks and that they were associated with PTSD. Um, so yeah, after recognizing the first trigger, I very quickly started to notice that things that should be simple or things that I, in the past, would not have thought twice about were incredibly activating for me. And when I say activating, it means I would go into panic or I would go into a flashback. Some more examples of this are I could not take either of my children to doctor's appointments for a very long time. Being in the doctor's office, I couldn't even go to my own doctor's appointments alone because being in a medical environment made me incredibly uncomfortable. And I also, early on, I couldn't even bring my newborn to some of her first doctor's appointments because of how ill I was. So the doctor's appointments and on top of all of that, their pediatrician is located right next to the hospital that I initially went to when I hemorrhaged, my postpartum hemorrhage. I ended up being transferred from there, but it's all part of the experience. So being in a medical environment would get me incredibly anxious, nauseous, dizzy, hard to breathe, all of that stuff. And then being at their doctor's office was triggering because it was in such close proximity to the hospital that I was at. And I couldn't handle it. So at first, I just didn't do doctor's appointments for my kids. My husband would take them. And obviously with therapy, like, we realized that's not sustainable, and I never did the type of therapy that some people do for OCD or PTSD, which is like ERP, exposure response. I can't remember what I'm horrible with acronyms, but I kind of did it in my own way. It's the same reason why I seem to not be able to tolerate EMDR. Instead of getting me to work through the trauma and move past it, it actually activates me more. So we did things in stages. So first, my husband just continued taking my kids to doctor's appointments like he had done while I was gone, while I was hospitalized. And then slowly, like when I had doctor's appointments, I would have someone come with me. And then when the kids would have doctor's appointments, I would go with my husband. And then once my husband couldn't do that anymore, I might have my mother-in-law come with me. And then eventually, I was able to do it on my own, and it was very uncomfortable. That is one area that I can happily report that I tolerate much better these days, and I credit my kid's pediatrician with that a lot because she is phenomenal. She not only recognized my acute mental health crises after having my second and, like, talked to me and talked to my husband and, like, tried to give us resources and stuff, but she's just an amazing pediatrician, and she's both of my kids' pediatricians, so I've been working with her in the same practice for over 10 years, and, so going there no longer feels unsafe. It feels okay. It's still not the most comfortable thing in the world because, again, I'm exposed to certain things that will trigger certain memories, but I can take my kids to the doctors now. Um, the sound of sirens would put me into flashbacks, and that, unfortunately, is still something that I struggle with today. Luckily, it doesn't happen often when I'm at home because I'm in a very, very rural area surrounded by farms. Unfortunately, we're literally a straight shot, like a 3-mile drive to the volunteer, rescue department in our town. So, all I have to do is drive straight to the stop sign, and there's the rescue station, and there's all the fire trucks and ambulances. But very rarely do they come down this road, and actually, they more often than not come down this road for me. Um, and of course, that is tied to my postpartum hemorrhage, and having the ambulance come and I mean, I was bleeding out on my bathroom floor, and I thought that was the end, and oh, that's still something that I struggle to think about, but initially, hearing sirens, I would go into flashbacks that I was hemorrhaging again, and my body would go into panic mode, which again was very physical, and I would panic. And being now disabled and chronically ill, I I mean, I have to admit, I have ridden in an ambulance more in the last 4 years. I don't think I'd ever ridden in an ambulance once. I rode in an ambulance once prior to this, and that's it. And then just in the last year alone, I think I've taken at least 3 or 4 ambulance rides for medical crises that I have at home. I've been in the ED way more than that, but every time I hear the sirens, it is still triggering. I don't go into full flashbacks anymore, but it does get me very anxious, which ties into the ED, the emergency department. I will avoid the emergency department at all costs, which is really, really hard to do when you are completely adrenal insufficient. I do not make any hormones or chemicals that are needed to sustain life. So I think I've made this joke before, but, like, I say I run on synthetics. I have to take synthetic everything. I'm on thyroid medication. I'm on hormone replacement therapy. I'm on steroids. Because my body just doesn't make any of those things. And it is absolutely insane the amount of ways that you can find yourself in an adrenal crisis. Um, so everything has to be taken very seriously, and I do spend a lot of time in emergency departments. But because of my experiences with the postpartum hemorrhage and with the mental health crises after having my youngest, my experiences of the emergency department in those instances were so traumatic that now my body and my brain just associates emergency departments with death, panic, disregard, uh, all the things, all the things. In the last couple of months, I have made some major improvements and I am very proud of myself. When I know that I need to go, I use not even 9 months ago, I would, like, lie to myself and I would lie to my partner about how intense my symptoms were so that I would not be taken to the emergency room, even eventually I would go, but that's how much I would avoid it. Now, I have a procedure, and it's kind of through trial and error, but if I know or if I can anticipate that, like, okay, this is not okay and I need to go in, we have a go bag and I will bring my Kindle and chargers and my phone and a comfort object. Yes, like a stuffed animal or something, a sweatshirt because it's always cold in there, and warm socks because it's always cold in there, and shoes that are easy to put on and take off. So, Crocs or flip flops of some sort, but things that will bring me comfort. And they go in my bag and they either ride with me in the ambulance or come with me in the car and I get myself set up. And I have now become very good at advocating for myself from the moment I arrive all the way through. I tell them that I have medical PTSD, them being the doctors and the nurses. I have my little card that they can scan that tells them everything about me, my whole medical history, what medications I'm on, so that I don't have to go through that whole thing every time. And I have an ED preference right now. So we have, like have talked about, we have the local hospital and then the bigger state hospital. I prefer, this was not the case for a long time, but I prefer going to the local hospital more lately because since everything happened 4 years ago, they have done a complete overhaul, so nothing looks the same. The staff is different, everything is updated and new, and I think almost all of the rooms are private, um, and then the others are semi-private, but it's just a different environment, and I've found the staff, especially the nurses, to be so accommodating of my needs. And the bigger state hospital is chaotic and it like literally talking about it right now is giving me anxiety. So, if I can avoid going there, I do. I will go to my local hospital. But for the longest time, I would do absolutely anything to avoid going there, which became trickier after my brain tumor and everything. But that's a different series, right? Another trigger very early on was holding my baby, who is not a baby anymore. Holding her, this to this day still feels so horrible to say out loud, but holding her made me feel physically ill. And it wasn't because I didn't want to hold her, because God did I want to hold her. But as soon as she would be in my arms, I would become nauseous and dizzy, and I would have a hard time breathing, and my heart rate would spike. And my reaction to that was I think I talked about this before. I became the only person who could put her to bed at night. Part of it was because I was ashamed of how much time I had missed with her, and I was trying to make up for it. And part of it was because I was like, no, this is not okay. I'm not going to be sick from holding my baby. But for a very long time, there were times when I would have to call my husband upstairs because she'd be asleep in my arms and I would be actively having a flashback. It would come out of nowhere. I would believe that I was back in the hospital and yeah, I could smell the smells. I could see everything and it was terrifying. Uh yeah. PTSD looks different for everyone and triggers are going to be different for everyone. And I don't even know, like, I'm not a mental health expert. I will say I'm a lived experience expert. And in my experience, um, flashbacks were common for me. They're less common today. But um, my PTSD manifested and manifests as panic attacks and or flashbacks. Those were the biggies initially, and it evolved over time. They changed. There's some I didn't even talk about today. So, next time we chat, I'll dive into, yeah, the ones I'm thinking of right now were really surprising to me. Ones that really kind of blindsided me and caught me by surprise. And again, we'll dive deeper and we'll talk about how they have evolved over time, how I learned to cope with all of it, and how I'm continuing to cope with it. But for today, that's all I can handle. That's all I can handle. So remember, we're going to do some self care. And self care doesn't need to be big, it doesn't need to be bubble baths or massages or things like that. It can literally be one of my favorite things, the what's not wrong. Find 3 to 5 things right now in your life, in this moment, in this space that are not wrong. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to drink my water and I'm going to see you next week.